Actually, I haven't thought about this because I need to pull this chair out, so I'm going to have to move that side.
Just pull it out. Mm-hmm.
We want our check for everything just to be doubly safe. So that is on, and that one is on. Okay. So yeah, I'm ready when you are.
Grand.
So it took a while to set up.
That's all right. Looking at you, yeah.
Oh yeah, just look at me, ignore them. So yeah, where I want to start is, could you just say who you are, and just explain who you are and your name.
My name is Matt Neal from Team Dynamics Motorsport. I'm 3 times British touring car champion and raced in the BTC for over 30 years.
And where I want to take it to begin with is, I want to go back to the first time you went to Rockingham in 2003. I believe you were the first winner around the venue. What was it like going there for the first time?
Going to Rockingham for the first time, it was awesome, to be fair, because the facility was brand new. I used to gauge whether I liked tracks or not on the toilets, and obviously everything was brand new, so it was always lovely. But no, it's just, it was just an awe-inspiring place, just the presence of it, and it wasn't set up for really touring car racing. It was oval racing primarily. But we looked into that and could enjoy the facility and the great viewing from the grandstands and everything, where you could see a little bit of the racing from everywhere.
And kind of, how different was it from the rest of the circuits within the UK? Because obviously it was a bit more American themed in how it was built and stuff. So how different was it?
I think all the circuits in the UK have their difference and their individual personalities and everything. Rockingham was great in the fact that it had a bit of that American influence, as you put it. The access was great, the parking was great, the viewing was great, and they looked at all those things. We obviously used the infield side of it and enjoyed a bit of the banking, which was fun. Not so much fun in the rain because it used to pool and little rivers used to come down, which could be quite tricky. But it was a phenomenal place. The structures and everything up into the grandstands, because I obviously did oval racing there as well as in 2001. Was it 1? No, 2, something like that. And then obviously enjoyed the touring cars there.
Yeah, and what was kind of the feeling around the paddock? What did other drivers think of the circuit? Was it a popular venue to go and visit?
If you ask drivers around the paddock whether they liked it or not, I think any driver will their favourite circuits are the ones they go well on, or the ones their cars suit. So I think they like Brands Hatch because it's a bit old school. Others will have their favourites, like Flash has his favourite because he's Knock Hill based and all the rest of it. And I cut my teeth near Alton Parks, but I have no least favourites or favourites, because I've had good times over the years. I've had good times and bad times at all of them. Obviously, I had a good run at Rockingham, but we had some pretty tough times there as well.
Yeah, and kind of going back to 2003, as it was a new venue, how tricky, if you can remember, how tricky was it to kind of learn the circuit originally? As it's not often that a new venue does come to a touring car.
Learning the venue, I didn't find it hard. Because in the modern era now, we've all got data and we've all got great, which is fantastic. But, back in the 90s, 80s and 90s, you'd arrive at a new circuit and there was no YouTube, no data, no nothing. Most you'd seen something was on a TV. And that wasn't from an in-car camera. So they used to say you had to learn a circuit within 7 laps if you were any good. And so turning up there was all right. We got data at the time of when we started racing at Rockingham. So I didn't find it too bad. It was a new challenge racing touring cars in banking, even though we were only using a few sections of it. I think the first layout we ran, they were worried we were going to be going too quick through turn 1. So we dived down into a chicane down in the bottom of it with some meaty curves, and that sort of gave the cars a bit of a bashing. But it was okay.
Yeah, and do you remember anything about your first win at the venue from that weekend?
I remember Alan Morrison, my teammate, gave me a proper hard time, and it was close. It was a bit nip and tuck, and it was in the days of pit stops, and it all came down to the pit stop, and I just managed to get out in front of him. We almost collided coming out of turn 1, and literally he kept me under pressure for the whole race. It was a great win for 1-2 for Honda. Unfortunately, the engines were really wound up at that point, and I think we both lost our engines in race 2, which with that they had to turn us back down. Honda internally, or Neal Brown, had to turn us back down after that, which was a bit of a wounder because they were absolute missiles up to that point. And
is that the frustration of going to a new venue sometimes, where it's just kind of there's that big kind of unknown about it?
Well, I think we were getting oil surge in the banking.
Oh yeah.
Because in that era we weren't allowed dry sumps, and oil starvation was an issue in the high load, high G corners, and obviously when you sat in the banking for a while, it does take effect because the car's not designed for that. No,
and yeah, obviously the ASCARs had the same issue when they started there as well. So yeah, it wasn't uncommon. Anyways, speaking of the ASCARs, you also raced there, a one-off in 2002. I believe you got 2 8th place finishes in the races you did. How did that come about? How were you able to join the ASCAR grid for those round?
Well, there was I can't remember the team actually, but they were running Jason Plato and Darren Manning, both very quick, both very accomplished. And then Darren had done a test for one of the Champ Car teams and got a call up, which was fantastic for him. And the team manager, Adrienne Watson, knew me and knew I was available at that point. And so she phoned me up and said, would you be up for it? And because Jason at that point, we used to get on. It was the days where we got on. I said, yeah, I was always up for a bit of crack and it was a bit of work. And so I went there, and it was quite an eye-opening experience, because we all look at ovals and we're going, oh yeah, they're going round in circles. Well, I used to, they're going round in circles, it can't be that hard. Big respect after just doing that one event for them, on what the cars do, how the cars work, the drafting, and that ASCAR is nothing like real, cup cars they have in the States. And so it was, I think I went well in testing and qualifying, and then had a big moment in the race and managed to recover to about 8th, but that was okay. It was okay.
And kind of, what was it like trying to adapt your driving style from touring car to the ASCAR? How different was the ASCAR to drive?
The ASCAR was nothing like a touring car. Nothing. I mean, it's a full-bodied car, which on a racetrack the same as a touring car. It's designed to go one way, so you've got stagger fit. It's when they were going. They said, oh, what are you doing? I said, oh, I've got a bit of push through turn 1. And I said, okay. And then the engineer goes, right, we're going to put 20 kilos of lead in front of your just in front of the front wheel. I went, you're putting lead in the car to go faster. And it was completely the opposite to something I've ever done. And all I was trying to do. And then obviously with oval racing, you're dependent on a spotter, because you can see the track in front of you, and it's what the other cars around you are doing. And so I talked an old mate of mine into, I said, oh, come on, it can't be that hard. You can come and do it for me. And he was so out of his depth to start with, because the car, if you're on an out lap, you're warming up, or an in lap, the other cars can come up on you so quickly, which you can almost cope with if you can see him coming. But as a spotter, he he wasn't giving a warning. And I went after the first run or the first day. I went, mate, you're going to kill me. I said, you got to kill me. He was in more of a panic before race day than I was. But yeah.
And how much time did you actually have to test in the car before you actually went racing in it?
Testing, I can't really remember. I think we had one day, and then we had to go off with Jason, and I went off to some event, promotional event with Jeremy. Jeremy Clarkson was there. I remember that, and I can't remember where it was and why it was and all the rest of it. But we went over there, and then we came back for the qualifying day. So it was a pretty busy 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And again, it was something new to me. So, but it's just like when you go to do Australian V8s, that's something new, and you've just got to crack on and get on with it, haven't you?
Yeah. And why was it that you kind of only did that weekend? Was there an would you have liked to have done it again?
Would I like to have done it again? Maybe. I think whether Darren was, I think it was a one-off event for him, so he came back. Oh no, it was the last race of the season. That was it. And Jason was in for the championship. He got a crack at the championship. So I was there as a support role for him, really, which was no problem. And Darren was hoping for bigger and better things in Champ Car. And then, I think the next year I managed to secure a permanent seat back in BTC with Vauxhall. So that was that's what I wanted to do, and that was the goal where I wanted to be, really.
And was that the only time that you and Jason were teammates? Has there been any other occasion where you've been teammates?
No, we've had fallings out, but that's the only time we've been teammates. Yeah, that one race. So.
And what kind of, obviously you did get on at that point, so what was it like to have him as a teammate at that point? Was there much a conversation between the pair of you, considering it was only one round, or what was that like?
I always like to think I've got on with all my teammates. And Jason's had, I think, I get on with him now, so I'm not going to say anything bad about Jason. But I think he has had a mixed relationship with a lot of his teammates, because he can be charming, but he's fiercely competitive. So I can see why he would fall out with his teammates, some of them, because he's so focused on what he needs to be and what he wants to do. And I think I out-qualified him, which didn't go down well. And he outraced me, which is fair enough. So we all ended up on evens, and he ended up in front. He didn't win the championship, unfortunately. Yeah, I can see it was a few years later that we really started to fall out, but that was another story.
And I'm going to come to that later, but I'm going to go to 2010, because I believe on that weekend you pulled the double. I think you won race 1 and you won race 3. Is there anything you remember from that weekend pulling the double at Rockingham?
Not really.
No.
I hate to say it. I mean, the car was really good, and I'd just gone back to Honda. I've been with Vauxhall in 08 and 09, and I went back and we got Honda on board again. So I went back and the car was really good. But piecing the races together, I remember that it worked really well. We used to run this because it was still S2000 regs, and the beam axle we got on the Civic then was very, very trick. And it helped with the steering. So the long infield section around there, we were super, super quick. And that worked really well.
What would you say, out of all the touring cars you drove there, which one would you say was the strongest out of them?
Strongest out of them? I actually don't know. We never drove super touring there, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The last generation I drove there were probably the fastest the touring cars have been since super touring days, just because they've got more horsepower with the turbo engines. The nimbleness of the S2000s, they were good. And BTC cars, it's horses for courses. It's been a happy hunting ground for me. I always look forward to going there. One, because I'm a Midlands-based person, and it wasn't too far away. It was an hour and a half away. It was good facilities there, good hotels around it. It was nice and easy, because you are on a bit of a circus. You live out of a suitcase a bit, and so you do look for those simple things in life.
And I'm going to move it to 2011 now. Things got a bit heated between you and Jason in qualifying. Can you just kind of talk us through that?
Yeah, I think we'd had a pretty acrimonious year, or up to that point, and he was getting under my, which he does. He's just a competitive person, and we'd had a lot of run-ins away from the circuit, and so it was volatile when we even got there. And he put it on pole early, but the Civic, we should have been quicker. The Honda should have been quicker, and he knew that. So the session got red flagged before we could have our second run on our tyres. So we got another run and he hadn't. So he went out and he deliberately just waited and just blocked us when we were on our flying lap, which pissed me off. And I got out of the car and I was pretty cheesed. We were still up there, but he was on pole. And anyway, he gave me, I can't remember, I might have said something first, and he just got out of his car and gave me the wanker sign across the pit lane, and that was just, it lit the blue touch paper. And then the rest is, it's the one time, because normally you go to, if you've done something wrong or anything, you know, we all have race licenses the same as road licenses, and you get points on them the same as road licenses, and if you get 12, you lose it. And so normally you go to the clerk of the course, and he decides with a committee, a board, and they decide whether you're guilty or not, and whether you get points or not, or fines. And then if you appeal that, it starts to get expensive. You go to the MSA stewards, or Motorsport UK stewards. It's one of the few times in my life I've been frog marched straight to the steward's office, which you know is going to get heavy at that point. And they sat me and Jason down together saying, you're a disgrace, people are looking up to you, right, you can have a £2,000 fine, you can have a £2,000 fine, and this and that and the other and everything. And I'm just giving it, we both walk out the steward's office with our tail between our legs. He walks one way and I walk the other way to our respective teams. And I thought it was a moral win because I knew my team was going to pay it rather than Honda were going to pay it and I thought at least I've cost him £2,000. But then at 100 meters, you know, they're saying, you do it again, you're going to lose your license. But then we walk out the steward's office, 100 meters, and there's the ITV blokes going, oh lads, that was brilliant. Can you do it again tomorrow? You know, this is great TV. We're going, well, hang on a minute, you can go and pay our fine. You know, it's not, so you're getting sort of double messages coming from every angle. But it's, as a fan, you know, watching all sorts of sports, football or rugby or whatever, we all want to see sports people pushed out their comfort zones and losing their shit a bit, because that's entertainment, isn't it? And that was a bit of a case on that day, and people come up to me now saying, "Oh, I wish you'd hit him," and all the rest of it. But yeah, so it was quite memorable.
And how important do you think yours and Jason's rivalry was to the championship in the later 2000s, early 2010s? Do you think it was important to have, because it was must kind of watch TV because you had to see what was going to happen between you two?
People want falling out. People want aggro. That's what you want on TV, whether it be wrestling or say football. You know, I remember Eric Cantona karate kicking into the crowd, and you know, it was gold, wasn't it? You know, you wanted to see it again in the next one. Or NASCAR fights, they're brilliant. You know, but I was talking to some of the NASCAR guys. There's a fight down there. The whole team gets fined. You know, they don't mess about, so they frown on it. But the problem is, in the heat of the moment, you forget about the cameras, you forget about everything else, and you focus on you know, what's going on in your head. I think it didn't do me and Jason any harm, and I didn't think it did the championship any harm either. You know, it sort of gave it a shot in the arm. Was it me specifically? I think he'd have fallen out with anybody who was competing against him, and some people would roll over and some people wouldn't, and the people who wouldn't, you know, where Van Muller really fell out with him, Alain Menu, I don't know whether Reedy did, but I did, obviously, but it lasted a decade. Because it seemed, I think we were very different in the way we went about things, but we were quite similar, and we had quite mischievous, fun traits in us. So he would do something to me because he thought it was funny and it would annoy me. And I'd take it the wrong way, and I'd do something back to him just to annoy him because I thought it was funny. And it just spiraled out of control until we were arriving at tracks with our lawyers. In the end, it just got completely out of control.
And how have you kind of got to the point now where it's resolved and you're both actually, well, you seem to get on a bit better now?
Life's too short, isn't it? We were friends. I wouldn't say we were best buddies before. You know, we were good friends before we fell out. And you know, he had a hard time about 12 months ago where he finished racing, which is a massive thing. You take that away, and his TV thing wasn't happening at the time, and then he was going through a lot of domestic problems at home as well. And I actually got really worried about him. You know, I thought he was in a real low place, and I've been there before, you know, a long time ago, and so I worried about him. You know, and I spoke to his dad, and I went down to see him, and I think that's hopefully made our relationship closer than ever now. And now, you know, and I'd do anything for him. I'd go down and see him. I'd help him out or whatever these days.
So. Actually, now I kind of want to move forward again. Like, so last time you raced there, 2018. Any memories from then racing there in the final time in 2018? Because it was kind of known that it was off the calendar for the next year. They'd announced that weekend. But any memories from racing there for the final time?
Again, I'm sorry. I don't think. No, not really. I remember in the Vauxhall in the pouring rain in 2009, and that was because it was a tricky place in the wet. And I remember we were doing we were testing there with Honda, and we were doing some demonstration laps and passenger laps in the race car, and through the banking. And the banking it's just, in the dry, it's flat. You know, you have to hang on, and the car's moving around a lot, but it's flat. In the wet, it's how brave do you want to be, because there's a big concrete wall on the outside. And as I say, if it really rained, it used to collect into little rivers, which you aquaplane. And I was taking someone round, and the thing just stepped completely sideways on me, and which wouldn't have been pretty, but fortunately I know front wheel drives and managed to straighten it up and carry on. But it was a bit of a heart-stopping moment. I think it was my engineer in it at the time. So, but the last race, it would have been in Honda times with the FK8 Type R there. So I'd have had Camo with me, I think, Dan Camish.
Good question.
Yeah, I'd have had Camish with me. Yeah. And he's all right, and he's bloody quick. He's annoyingly quick, but he's a good lad. He's all right.
Yeah, and do you think it's a shame where the circuit is now, where it's kind of there's no racing happening at all on it?
Yeah, but how many circuits does that happen to? Crystal Palace, Brooklands. You know, you could reel them off. It's sad. It's a shame because we've got to protect our circuits. You never know; it might come back. Last I heard, the grandstands have been condemned. So there would have to be something. At least it's not a housing estate yet. You know, which a lot of the others are, like Crystal Palace. And you know, you go to Hockenheim. And okay, they've got an Indy circuit there now, but it's the classic, the old out the back is all gone, and that's just woodland. It's overgrown. Yeah, it's life goes on, isn't it? It wasn't there when I started racing. It's not going to be there when I finish racing. So, but we enjoyed the time.
Yeah, and where was I going to go with this? I was going to say, is that it? It's just kind of you have to just move on from these things, and it's just and kind of enjoy the times you did have there. Yeah,
I think don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened, sort of scenario. And you know, you can dwell on so many. There's a load of circuits I've raced at around the world which don't exist anymore. Oran Park in Australia, which is near Sydney, that was a fantastic little circuit. It's a housing estate now. It's sad, but if you dwell on things, you never get on with your life. So just, as I say, you just be happy you were there and enjoying it at the time.
Yeah, and have you got kind of any other like happy memories from Rockingham? Anything that comes to mind about time spent at the venue?
I always remember the security were really not. You remember simple things which matter to you. The access was great. The security guys were good. You know, the people who ran it were first class. You know, they really wanted to make it happen. And even when they were trying to commercially make it stack up, doing concerts there, and it was an entertainment thing. That was sort of thinking out the box and really good and making it happen. Racing wise. Yeah, there were so many different formats. It's a shame because there were so many different formats to the track. And as Honda, we used to use it a lot for bike demos and car demos, not just for race cars, but for road cars and road bikes as well. So we had some good times there.
Was it a venue, because I'm speaking to some other drivers, it seems one that they kind of like to go and test there. Was it ever really a kind of a test venue for you because of the multiple layouts and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, because you could use it. I mean, you had such as in the format that it sort of settled into for touring cars. Yeah, you had heavy braking zones. You had long loaded corners, which could, because even with that, the long left-hander all the way around the back, we'd be, never mind the banking, we'd be getting oil surge through there, or fuel surge in the tanks, for the pickup points and everything. So you could generate a lot of things. Traction out the last corner. You're always looking. It was quite a good circuit to test out.
Yeah. Was it a hard one to set up on, because you keep going back to like the oil surge issues with the cars? Was it particularly trickier to set the cars up for it rather than other venues, or was the data all right and you could just?
I don't think it was, as a driver, it was particularly hard to set up or work with your engineer setting it up. I think the engineering side, for the engines and the way that all worked. We were testing the new fuel tanks for next generation touring cars, the current, which is the current format, and that was a challenge. Rockingham was a real challenge around there, and also the steering, because the steering would load up in the so you'd almost lose the power steering, just because everything was flexing so much because it was you're buried into the banking. So it provided new challenges, but not for me. It was for me to drive it a little bit at the time, but it was more for the engineer's side.
And do you think kind of touring car adapted well after it had fallen off of the calendar? Because I know afterwards it was kind of, you ended up doing some kind of more double headers. Now they do the Donington GP and national layout. Do you think that was a good kind of adaptation to it kind of disappearing? Or?
I thought it was great because it was a central based track, middle of the country, and it was somewhere different. And it's like Knockhill's not like any other track on the calendar, just because it isn't. Rockingham was like no other track on the circuit because no other track had got the banking, no other track had got this and that and the other, and it was just something different. It was a new challenge, new opportunities. It could suit your car, it could not, which gave different scenarios. So I was sad to see it fall off the calendar, if I'm honest. I'd rather go to there than to Thruxton twice, even though I love Thruxton and Donington, than to each one of those twice, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think that's everything I've got for you. So thank you very much for sitting and chatting to me. Now I've got a phone, but so let me stand up.
Cheers, Tom. That all right?
Yeah, that was fine.